4 years ago, Julie Andrews made an announcement.
I'm definitely going to be doing a musical of the story of Gertrude Lawrence for 20th Century-Fox and for Robert Wise, who did Sound of Music. It'll be exactly the same sort of gang as did The Sound of Music, and it'll be great fun to work with them all again.
That gang did work together again. And the result? The sparkling 20th Century-Fox deluxe color musical, Star. Star, the musical biography of one of the theater's most extraordinary personalities, Gertrude Lawrence, with the most exciting star of today's theater world in the leading role, Miss Julie Andrews. The team of director Robert Wise, producer Saul Chaplin, and star Julie Andrews, who created The Sound of Music, the most popular picture of all time, bid fair to do it again with Star. Star is the story of 3 fabulous decades in the life of a Cockney English girl who danced, acted, and sang her way to worldwide theatrical triumph. Gertrude Lawrence was a gay eccentric, a flamboyant performer, an elegant lady, a delightful and warm human being who charmed audiences throughout Britain and America during the decades between World Wars I and II. Remarkable parallels occur between the lives and careers of the fabulous woman who was Gertrude Lawrence and the equally fabulous young star who is playing her role in the new movie, Julie Andrews. Producer Saul Chaplin cites the similarities.
Strangely enough, her youth was very much like Gertrude Lawrence's. She came from a rather middle-class family. She was brought up right from the bottom of show business to the top. Gertrude Lawrence started in old music halls and in beer halls, what we consider beer halls here. They both went through the same kind of training through vaudeville and pantomimes that they have in London. They both had interesting voices in that Julie Andrews was a crazy kind of soprano at the age of 10. And Gertrude Lawrence also had a very, very sweet voice. Then at the same time, they both, because of their background, they both learned how to sing, how to dance, and how to act.
And Julie herself points out parallels in their lives.
She began in show business as a child, and so did I. Her parents were separated, and so were mine. She had a daughter. I have a daughter. She did a lot of vaudeville and concert party and touring and music halls and things like that, as did I in the early days. So I feel we have a lot in common.
But Julie also feels there is a difference between her and Gertrude Lawrence.
She was certainly a far more glamorous lady than I am. I think she had much more style and panache, and she was much more vivid. I think possibly it's hard to be objective, but I think I'm a much quieter personality than she was. And that was probably the hardest thing of all. You know, when Gertie had tantrums in the movie, when I had to portray those tantrums and anger, and there was a drunk scene too, it was hard to get myself up as high emotionally as she must have been. My feelings were on a much lower level.
Star was nearly 4 years in the preparation and filming. Robert Wise, the fabulous 4 Oscar winner who directed the picture, tells how the decision to do the life of Gertrude Lawrence came out of his working with Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music.
We were not really in the market to do a film about Gertrude Lawrence. It hadn't occurred to us, but after all of us had such a great time and such a successful time with Julie in The Sound of Music, we wanted very much to do another film with her. And it was an associate of mine came up with the idea of starring her in a film about Gertrude Lawrence. And of course this appealed to us immediately because Gertrude's career spanned very exciting and fun periods of the 20s and the 30s. She was a great bosom friend and associate and co-worker with Noel Coward. This was a whole area that we felt we could have great fun with. We knew the numbers, the songs that Gertie had done over the years. We felt that many of these things would be marvelous for Julie Andrews. So it was in this search for something to star Julie in that the whole idea of Star and the story of Gertrude Lawrence came about.
Quite often, the idea of doing something about Gertrude Lawrence has cropped up in my life. When I was on Broadway in My Fair Lady, it was suggested I do a musical, and a film was mentioned even then. And at the time, I'm ashamed to say, it didn't appeal to me. too much. And it wasn't until one day, just after The Sound of Music, we actually were finishing the filming of Sound of Music, and Robert Wise, the director, and Saul Chaplin, the associate producer, said, come have lunch, we have something to talk to you about. And they then said, you know, what do you think about doing a musical of Gertrude Lawrence? And their ideas about it, their suggestions as to how it should be done, began to really sort of make me tingle, and I got that kind of, you know, the hairs on the back of my neck began to tingle a little, and I realized I was getting rather excited, and I then said, fine, let's go ahead.
One of the 16 great songs that Julie sings in Star is the beautifully melodic Someone to Watch Over Me, written by George Gershwin for the musical comedy OK in the mid-20s. Here's the soundtrack with Julie singing on the stage of the Lyceum Theater in New York.
There's a saying old, says that love is blind. Still we're often told, seek and ye shall find. So I'm going to seek a certain lad I've had in mind. Looking everywhere, haven't found him yet. He's the big affair I cannot forget. Only man I ever think of will regret. I'd like to add his initial to my monogram. Tell me, where is the shepherd for this lost lamb? There's a somebody I'm longing to see. I hope that he turns out to be someone to watch over me. I'm a little lamb who's lost in the wood. I know I could always be good to one who'll watch over me. Although he may not be the man some girls think of as handsome, to my heart he carries the key. Won't you tell him please to put on some speed? Follow my lead. Oh, how I need someone to watch over me. Someone to watch over
Isn't that beautiful? And it's over 40 years old. One of the co-stars of Star is Richard Crenna, who was one of the Robert Wise team in the Sand Pebbles. Dick has an enviable role in Star.
I have the distinct pleasure of being Miss Andrews' suitor, one of a number of suitors, but for the first time in my screen career, I end up with a girl. I play Richard Aldrich, who was the real-life Mr. Gertrude Lawrence, and Richard Aldrich, a wonderful man and producer who courted and won Gertie Lawrence's heart, and I am fortunate enough to play that part in the picture.
As Robert Wise mentioned a moment ago, Gertrude Lawrence and the great English actor, playwright, and composer Noel Coward became the best of friends. They starred together. He wrote songs for her. Between them, they dominated Mayfair society as well as the British stage for well over 2 decades. For the man to portray himself in Star, Coward recommended Daniel Massey, a fine British repertory actor whose mother appeared with the playwright in the original stage production of Coward's own play, Private Lives. And of course, musical excerpts from many of Coward's plays shine throughout the production of Star. Forbidden Fruit, Coward's very first song, which Massey sings. Parisian Pierrot, Someday I'll Find You, Has Anybody Seen Our Ship? Massey's relationship with Julie Andrews in Star is an extraordinary one because, of course, it portrays the relationship between Coward and Gertrude Lawrence.
They were both enormously friendly, like a brother and sister. They knew each other from way back when they were in school, and he was enormously devoted to her, enormously admiring of her. I think he was exasperated by her professionally, as I think everybody who worked with her, but she had an incandescence and an ability that overrode anything.
Noel Coward lives in Switzerland today. He's now 67 years old. Gertrude Lawrence died in 1952. Another man who was very important in Gertrude Lawrence's life was Sir Anthony Spencer. Michael Craig, the fine British actor who plays the part, fills us in on Sir Anthony's role in the actress's life.
This man was sort of instrumental in guiding her in the way of how to behave in society and what clothes to wear, and generally turn her from a Cockney, falling down sort of comic into the world's, greatest leading lady.
Sir Anthony had a deep and lasting relationship with Miss Lawrence, but he was not one of the theatrical people.
Was interested in the theater, but in fact he was a soldier and then later a businessman. He retired from the army and became a businessman. It's a kind of love interest more than theatrical personality. He's a man who falls in love with her and she falls in love with him, but because of the pressures of her life and her ambition to work in the theater, they couldn't get married, or they didn't get married, but they continued to be friends right up to the end of their lives.
There's a tremendously impressive cast in the production of Star. In addition to those we've heard, the long list of great performers includes John Cullen, Bruce Forsyth, Beryl Reid, Elizabeth St. Clair, Richard Carlin, Alan Oppenheimer, Jock Livingston, and J. Pat O'Malley. Of all the immensely talented people in the cast, Julie Andrews, of course, stands out. She has to act, sing, and dance to perfection in order to portray one of the greatest pros in the business. And as producer Saul Chaplin says,
She did remarkably well. Bob Wise and I always had a feeling that Julie went way beyond what the average person has seen up to now. I mean, she has more depth as a person than the average person knows about, and she certainly has more depth as an actress. In this picture, for instance, she really runs the gamut, I think. She plays this little bungling 17-year-old Gertrude Lawrence. She goes from that to the highly sophisticated glamour girl of the late 30s. Besides all of that, she has very dramatic scenes to play, which she does marvelously well. As a matter of fact, I don't know whether it's been told before, but Richard Aldrich, the real Richard Aldrich, that is, complimented her when he saw us shooting at Cape Cod, and when he saw Julie playing Gertie, he said it kind of gave him an eerie feeling because he suddenly felt that Gertie was back.
while we all know Julie Andrews as a great star of musicals, Bob Wise points out that as an actress, she really doesn't need a musical background.
She doesn't need it at all. I think the need for the musical background would only come from the audience itself. They seem to love her so much, understandably so, in musicals and doing songs and dances. She dances in Star like she's never done before on the stage screen. I think people will find it a whole side of her they've never seen before.
And what about Julie herself? What does she feel about her performance as Gertrude Lawrence in Star?
I'm a little I don't know if the word is paranoid or not, but I'm a little anxious about their reaction to it. A good number of people knew her, although that was by theatrical standards, not by motion picture standards. But even so, a good many people that knew her will be watching to see how the film will be done. And also, I kind of wanted to do Gertie justice. I've never seen her. I've only heard her on record. I've seen pictures of her. The difficulty was to know whether to try and do an impersonation of Gertie or just try and tell a marvelous story. And finally, I think we all agreed that the latter was the best thing to do. And I sort of felt, too, that maybe somewhere Gertie was kind of watching over my shoulder, maybe even, frowning once in a while, steering in one direction or another. Anyway, I hope she's pleased.
She'll be pleased, as will the millions of her fans, along with the fans of Julie Andrews, when they see the story of one of the greatest theatrical stars of all time, Gertrude Lawrence, in the glittering 20th Century-Fox release of the Robert Wise musical production Star. This has been Dick Strout reporting from Hollywood.